Welcome, everyone. My name is Jacob. Thank you for joining me. This is Hunt Detail, and we're in the last week of November. A lot of things are changing. It's interesting how September is like a full chunk of not a whole lot of change in the whitetail woods. October is maybe split into two, but November, things change really. It seems like every 5 days. And we're going to get into some of that. But before we do, I have to start out on a very serious note. This a few days ago from this recording, I lost my brother-in-law to suicide. He took his life, and he was 54. He was highly successful. He was a hunter. We would connect a lot during the hunting season, but a lot just in general. I knew he was struggling, and it's quite hard to fathom. Honestly, even as I say it, I almost don't even believe it, because he was someone that I loved dearly and always looked forward to connect. And I just want to say that if you're struggling right now, dial 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You just hit 988 call. Or if you know someone that's struggling, give them a call. Invite them out to hunt your favorite spot. I mean, at this point, I would give up anything to have him back. And, I just, there's a huge hole in my heart and everybody that knew him. The ripple effects are significant. I want you to know personally that you are important, you are loved, and you are valuable. And if you, again, are struggling, dial 988 or call a friend, call somebody, tell them you need them. It's not weakness to be vulnerable. It's not weakness to say that you're struggling. If you think that it's the case, that's a lie, and it always has been. It's actually the strength in vulnerability. So I wanted to open with that because it's obviously more important than anything that I'm about to talk about as it relates to deer hunting. I have a lot of raw emotions, and I'll leave it at that. We're going to pivot now into some of the topics for this season. Before I do, I suppose I do want to announce that we have two winners for the giveaway. Again, everybody wins. Go to Hunt Detail and message me the word detail, and you're entered, and you're pretty much going to win something. And I forgot to mention the winner from week 2. That was Josh. Josh, you have won a thing of Wasatch steak seasoning from redmond.life.com. Redmond Life creates a lot of stuff. They create seasonings. They create the real salt that you've probably seen. They create the Relight, which is the electrolyte mix that has 0 sugar. It tastes great. They also create Trophy Rock. And if you use the word detail at redmondhunt.com, you can save on Trophy Rock supplies. If you go to redmond.life.com, you can save 15% on those products there. So Josh, you won this week. Last week, Nitro, you won this week. So congratulations there. I'm going to send those things out in December. I'll reach out to you all for your addresses. And this is the last week. If you message me the word detail, you will be entered. And also, we have another sponsor that's Raw Rev protein bars. They are high protein, low sugar. They're delicious. And they don't have any like artificial junk in them. And you use the code detail, you'll save 20% on your first order. So order a bunch, and you'll be glad you did. Um, Over the past few weeks, a lot of new bows have been launched. Matthews, I think Prime, Hoyt have launched their new bows. It really interesting to see some of the, uh, for example, with the Hoyt bows, some of the tuning features that they've integrated. I don't think they had them last year, so now they have brought them to their new flagship bow. And I'm as we approach ATA, you're probably going to see more product launches. And what I'm going to be doing is I will be at ATA this year. I'll be bringing gear reviews or videos from new launches from companies like Tethered or even some of the other companies that are not necessarily big yet. So stay tuned for that content. And also, I would encourage you to go to the Hunt Detail YouTube channel, subscribe there. You're going to get all of that content. I really, the things that I focus on the channel and certainly here is breaking down the paradox of choice. Some of these categories are huge when it comes to mobile whitetail hunting or even like Western hunting stuff. You have all of these products, and it's difficult to discern what do I really want to get. If you look at climbing sticks for a mobile hunter, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different options. If you look at saddles, if you look at platforms, and so a lot of that stuff is where I focus on these categories and breaking down so that you can really discern what are the top, say, 3 choices within a particular category instead of 15 choices where it's a bit overwhelming. So I'm going to be digging deep into a lot of new categories or existing categories as we get into the January, February, March timeframe. Obviously, I'll be learning about some of these new products at ATA and diving deep in some of these categories on the YouTube channel and certainly on here. But I would say get to the YouTube channel and you'll see that. And it's exciting, even though as hunting season is moving so fast, it is exciting to see new gear options hit the market and sort of think about how we would update and evolve our gear for 2026, which is hard to believe. But this past weekend, I spent most of Saturday in the woods. Saturday morning was in a big woods, public land. Did not see any deer. Hunted an area that I felt really had a high level of confidence based on the wind and based on some of the sign, and it was a dud. I mean, there was some fresh scat, but ultimately, it didn't pan out. And then that afternoon, took my son out to a piece of private to gun hunt, and it was really uneventful right until last light. With about 5 minutes left, we had a small buck enter from a field into the wooded area. It was getting very, very dark. We're hunting with a rifle, and he killed a buck 2 years ago with a rifle. He didn't hunt last year because he just didn't have the desire to. And it's interesting to think about the decisions that we have to make within a few seconds and before the opportunity's gone. And this deer entered the woods. Honestly, I couldn't tell what exactly, if it was a doe or a buck, and it really didn't matter. But he didn't want to shoot a fawn, and I don't blame him, he wanted to shoot a good sized doe or a buck. This deer came in the woods. I was trying to identify it. If he'd have shot, now he couldn't find it in the scope, he admitted later on, initially. And then as it got further into the woods, it was very dark and very difficult to see. And I was relying on him to figure out if he had a shot or not. I murped the deer several times, got it to stop because it was trotting at a good clip. But there was, of course, a tree covering his vitals. And, kudos to my son for not taking the shot. not taking a crap shot. He was really evaluating. He also said that he wasn't really steady. He felt like his back wasn't up against the tree very good. And so, very exciting, lots of lessons coming out of that hunt, and very proud of him for having the wherewithal to say, you know what, I don't have a shot. I don't have a good shot. And honestly, it was still within legal shooting light, but boy, it was really dark. I think it was kind of cloudy that day. The moon was sort of almost like a new moon, so it was a little bit darker in that regard. So ultimately, great platform for conversation with him. It sort of leads into our broader conversation today, or our broader podcast. From a phase standpoint, if you go by the Drury 13, November 20th to the 25th is phase 9, and that's parties over. November 26th to the 5th is the Green Revisited. So parties over, rut is winding down. You're seeing less and less sort of rut-related movement. Green Revisited is back onto a feeding pattern. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on where you are in the country, and these dates may be off just a bit. And it's also depends on the amount of pressure. I mean, if you're big woods public land and there's been a lot of pressure, the Green Revisited might not apply. They're not going to go to a field edge, certainly during daylight hours, because of all the pressure they've been receiving. But if you have a piece of private, you might start seeing a return to feeding movement the 26th through the 5th, especially as gun seasons start to close, people start to hang it up for the year. And then phase number 11 is waiting for a front. And really it's looking for these big temperature drops to get deer off their feet. Maybe it's 45 degrees and then it drops to 25 from a high standpoint or a low or what have you. And so that's December 4th through the 10th. Personally, I feel like I'm glad that gun seasons are starting to close. It gets people out of the woods. I would say 5 to 7 days after gun season closes, then it might be a good opportunity to get back out there and see if deer have returned to some level of increased movement, because they're not being, shot at, bumped, pushed, all of that. Obviously, in the first week of December, you sort of have that secondary rut where a fawn, as we mentioned last week, could come into estrus, or those unbred does could come back into estrus. And that's something to look forward to and be excited about. And, while there's a lot less deer in the woods, per se, certainly a lot less bucks, I think that there is opportunity, obviously. There's always opportunity as long as the season's in to fill an additional tag. On a personal note, I filled a buck tag, I think it was October 28th, roughly. I mean, it took me a few days to find that buck, and it was sort of a fiasco, and I have a podcast on that. But I have, shot a couple does. I have venison in the fridge. I've definitely passed some deer. I would like to maybe get another doe late season. I really had hoped my son would get a deer this past weekend. And then I do want to fill at least one more archery tag. And I do have some opportunities to gun hunt some more. That's not completely over. But that's really what I'm looking at. I will say, on the whole, it's been a really fun rut. It's been successful in a lot of ways. I had a really big 8-pointer pushing does a few weeks ago. He was within 50 yards. I mean, man, he was a brute. And I had really kind of had hoped that I would get a shot at him or another shot at him. 50 yards was just too far at this particular, with the brush and whatnot. It was too risky of a shot, but he was completely unaware of me. And then I had other just times to observe the rut, which is always fun to see. If you went to the Instagram page, you can see I have maybe a 3-year-old stomping on a doe that I shot, and I mentioned that last week, and was really a neat experience to sort of watch that as he was trying to get her to get up. But I think I've seen online on some of the Facebook feeds guys that have been frustrated. They've been hunting for 4 and 5 years and not filled a tag. And I think the biggest thing, if I go back to my son's experience, I mean, he was frustrated, but he was sort of okay with it. But I think having a growth mindset around all of this stuff, even in your work life, is really a much better way to approach things as opposed to having a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is suggesting that I'm no good and I can't get better, or I'm never going to be good at something. And having a growth mindset is like, oh, I learned this, I learned this, I learned this. These are my takeaways. Next time, not going to do it this way. I didn't see anything on a piece of public that I've hunted before Saturday morning. Was it disappointing? Yeah, sure, it was disappointing. I think there was another area that I probably should have hunted. I know I need to branch out more. I didn't do as much scouting there. I've hunted those areas a lot, but I need to branch out more and scout in preparation for next year. Certainly, I'm going to hunt that some more to try to fill that tag, but I know there's opportunity there, and I'm getting I'm sort of relying on what I know and sort of created some ruts there in terms of how I hunt. And I need to do it better. I need to challenge myself a little bit more there. And that's really what the growth mindset is about, is really just trying to uh, understand that all of this is a learning opportunity and it's all building for a future hunt. And I've heard, that failure there really is no such thing as failure until you quit. So when you quit, that's when you fail. And that's really, again, part of the mindset. I think the other component of this, when I see guys that are frustrated saying that they haven't filled a tag for 4 and 5 years, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think back to when I first got back into hunting. I hunted as in high school just a little bit, then got completely out of it when I was in college, came back to it, I don't know, 15 years ago. And I was living in a different state, and I really wasn't having a lot of success. I would see some deer, but I was, yeah, I didn't have all of the puzzle pieces put together. And then about a decade ago, I just started putting it together and consistently killing deer, killing bucks. And I think maybe for the past 9 years, I've killed one, if not multiple bucks, quality bucks for the areas that I hunt. And it's just a function of just really trying to, again, not seeking outside validation. I think a lot of times especially in the social media age, we feel like we have to post a picture of us with a buck because we're seeking that outside validation. But if you're doing this just for your own internal drive, the journey, the adventure, the challenge of it, then none of that stuff is really going to matter, nor should it matter. It's really about what you get out of it not necessarily anybody else. And I think that that's part of that perspective is don't seek outside validation. Challenge yourself, create theories in the field. I think the deer might be doing this, and doing this, and then test those theories. And then if it's like, nope, they're not, then you're like, well, I got to keep going. I'm still trying to crack the code on some of these spots where I've actually killed deer before, and I think there's that balance of using old data versus collecting new data. So, those are some things to consider on a macro level. If you've been struggling to put down a buck or to be consistent with your hunting. Again, I am no expert by any means, so don't, there's obviously much better big buck killers or buck killers in general. I'm not even a big buck killer. I just like to shoot deer, and I have a hard time sometimes, even if it's a small rack buck. But because I enjoy the process. I enjoy shot placement. I enjoy dragging the deer out. I enjoy breaking the deer down, that sort of thing. But if you want to communicate with me you want some encouragement, I would say find me on Instagram, Hunt Detail, message me. Tell me how your season's going. Good, bad, or ugly. I'd love to hear about it and chat with you about it and say, hey, great job. Or if you had a piece of terrain that you want my opinion on, send me a picture of it. I'm not going to hunt it, I promise you. And I'll tell you how I might approach it. Obviously, wind is a primary factor. You have thermals to consider. But I know this can be a tough time of year for a lot of people as it relates to deer hunting, because it does feel truly like the party's over and everybody is got their prize except you. And that's just not the case. It's not an easy hobby, and but it's not supposed to be easy. And so I would say keep at it. And again, I'm here to be a cheerleader. If you want to reach out to me via Instagram, happy to chat with you and maybe give you some additional perspective or ideas. Remember, if you're struggling, dial 988. Mental health is as important as anything else. And talk to somebody, tell them you're struggling, get the help you need. Best of luck the rest of the season, and we'll talk again next week. All the best.